Good morning and welcome to Smart Business Strategies. I am Anna Wild, your franchise economist, and today I have a very special guest, Alice Garcia. She made an executive exit from the corporate world to franchise business ownership. So, Alice, welcome to the show and thank you for being willing to share your story with us.
Yeah, Anna, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, Alice went from I like to say executive to entrepreneur. Now, start us off by sharing a little bit about your background so we know where you came from, and then we'll talk about what led you to a franchise.
Thanks. Yeah, so I am originally from Houston, Texas, and so I joined the military, went to a military school for college, and after that I joined I was in the military for 5.5 years active duty. And after I left the military, I worked at a financial services company. I did a lot of different jobs from HR to strategy to communications there for about 13 years. And then that's when I made the transition to franchise ownership for a property management franchise.
Okay, so let's talk about what prompted you to make the exit from the corporate world.
It was shortly after COVID. I think a lot of people were reassessing how they wanted what they wanted life to look like.
Right.
I had a big birthday milestone coming up as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I was unsatisfied with, I loved my job. I loved the people I worked with.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I had a lot of good connections, but I felt like I wasn't being fully utilized. Like my skills weren't, there were more things that I could do, but I wasn't getting the opportunities, or I just wasn't feeling like there was the right opportunities that I wanted. Mm-hmm. So for the first time, I started looking outside of the corporate life and seeing, what other opportunities were out there. And that really would feel like I was adding value, not just to a company, but to something bigger.
And so, I mean, there are obviously other options besides you could have changed jobs, you could have changed careers, you could have gotten another degree. I mean, there are all kinds of things you could have done. Some people flip houses, some people do real estate, some people day trade. So what is it for you that got you thinking a business, and then in particular, why a franchised business?
Well, so funny you mentioned real estate. I had done investing properties on the side. So it was my side gig. Whenever I felt like I needed some more challenge, I would purchase a property and renovate it and then rent it out. And so I was familiar with the industry, but never gotten my license and had always wondered what it would be like. But, because of the fluctuations in the market, I just wasn't ready to take that kind of a risk to, do flipping full time. And so I did look at, should I, instead of doing a franchise, should I just start my own business, either in real estate or flipping or doing something like that? At the point, I really was still wanting security in some ways and some stability. And I did look at other businesses. So how I found out about franchising was that I went to a hiring conference for military veterans. And at that conference, they were talking about franchising. And at that point, I hadn't considered it at all. I didn't even think that when I thought of franchising, I thought, of a restaurant franchise or a retail franchise. I didn't even think that there were service-based. I knew that there were service-based franchise, but I just figured that it was out of reach and, it cost a lot of money and it just wasn't something that I'd be interested in doing. And so in that session is where I learned about property management as a franchise. And and that really gave me the idea of, I could start a business not by myself, but with support and structure and systems. And it wouldn't be as daunting as completely starting it by myself and feeling like I was alone. I'm pretty social. And so I like the idea of having a peer group and not being by myself.
Well, and then somehow we met through LinkedIn, I believe. So I think it was just good timing, wasn't it? Because you'd just gone to that conference and then you and I connected. So what went well for the audience, what I do, I'm a franchise advisor and I help people like Alice transition from the corporate world into franchise business ownership. So as you made that transition, what went well for you when you made the change from executive to entrepreneur? And then we'll ask the flip side of that, what didn't go well? So start us off with what went well for you when you made the change.
What went well was that a lot of the skills and things that I learned from the military, basic leadership and working with teams, diverse teams, the skills of communication and time management, planning, all of those translated, from the military and from my corporate life into owning a business. The business really is about, regardless of what your business is, you're going to be working with people and building relationships. And so those were definitely skills that I had worked on and developed and honed over my career thus far. So I think those translated well. In my corporate life, I had worked in, like I mentioned, in human resources and had done some work in finance and communication. So I understood marketing enough to be dangerous and enough about, some technology and software and things like that, that I had a good foundational knowledge on businesses and how they ran, at least from a financial services perspective. And from my time as an investor and managing my own properties, again, I knew enough to be dangerous and to, be compliant. So those things translated really well from those careers into the business ownership.
And one thing that you'd shared with me is that your business grew faster than you thought it would, and that you were a bit kind of shocked that people were turning their keys over to their, properties to you so easily. It went easier and faster than you thought. Is that right?
It did. I still sometimes now, even though it's been a little while, that how, the relationships, you can easily build trust if you have previous relationships with people. But just someone who, they've found our business and we met, in person, just in that interaction, how you treat people and how you communicate. A home is people's biggest investment.
Yes.
And sometimes their only piece of ownership. And for someone to trust me with their property every time, I'm still thankful and grateful that they've chosen to entrust me with that property and with that piece of their life. And I don't take it lightly, but I still am sometimes surprised that, that it's so that they're trusting. But I think it's based in the fact that I'm able to present what we can provide and a record of positive service and recommendations and references. So there's a feeling of, especially with veterans, I think it's a lot of my owners are active duty and veterans. There's already an understanding of feeling and camaraderie and, common values. And so if someone has served, there's already that connection and you're able to build trust faster than with someone who hasn't served. And in a lot of ways, we talk the same language. And so I think that's why it's easier. It's not necessarily a sell there. It's more of just making sure that we're the right fit personality and communication wise. But that has translated well.
Well, Alice, just to comment on that, I too served on active duty for 5.5 years, and I too worked in the Fortune 500, and then I became a business owner. So I really do click with you on lots of levels, and it's just been a pleasure to watch you go from where you're feeling a little unfulfilled, a little disappointed, to like, you're on it, the world is your oyster. That's just wonderful. Well, so let's do the flip side of that question that we asked earlier. So what didn't go well? Where were there some lessons learned as you did make that transition from steady paycheck, structured corporate environment to now it's all on you?
There is that moment of absolute being terrified of the decision. So I remember telling you, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm happy about it. I started getting all my licensing and getting the business set up. And then there was the moment of doubt of, what did I just do?
Yeah.
Like, deep breath. Okay, the pressure is on. I think though, veterans and people who work well under pressure is your time to shine then. What probably didn't go well is there's a lot of, for me, I like to understand how the pieces fit. I'll take chaotic things and make them, what I used to, when I would interview for jobs, I would say, I like taking chaos and turning it into order. And so for me, a lot of the different vendors, and I guess in my head, I thought all the franchises, they just have a system and it just all, it's one thing. I'm not thinking about, there's a lot of vendors that come into that system. And for me, I needed to understand, how did the different vendors, where did they come in our process? And so I ended up like drawing out a life cycle of a lead, or like a life cycle of a property, and where do I, and when do I bring in this vendor, and how do they all fit together, and which APIs integrate with each other, and so that took a little bit of getting it all straight in my head. And once I did, that I was able to fully grasp everything. The other side personally for me was, again, because it was my own thing, I was and still am totally fine working as much for myself, because in the military, you work 24/7, and it wasn't you didn't get paid extra, and you didn't get your own thing. And same in corporate life, you'd work, more than your 80 hours, more than your work week. And you get a bonus maybe, or you get some recognition, but you didn't walk away with ownership of something and having something to leave a legacy with. And so it was, I definitely, those first few months, because if I didn't answer the phone, nobody else did. And that was, potential business going away, that I answered the phone regardless of where I was, what I was doing, what time of day. I answered the phone. If I was awake, I was answering the phone. And my friends and family kind of had an intervention very kindly to give me look, we know you're working hard. We understand why, those first few years of owning a business, you are really blood, sweat, and tears trying to get, making sure that it's successful and that it's something that can continue, and you don't, have struggles long-term. And so they understood, but they're like, you still need to find time for fun. What I love about the franchise that I selected is that one of the tenets is have fun. And so I really, after that, made time for, going to trivia with friends, or going to movies and restaurants, and, being okay with taking a day trip somewhere on the weekend, and not working, Saturday and Sunday, taking the time off and really looking at my structure of my work week, and figuring out where were those times, sometimes in the middle of the day, where I need to go work out and take some time for myself because I have stuff in the evening, or I have showings on the weekend. And so I think that was really what at first didn't go well, but I have since taken the advice from folks and made it a place where I still work hard, but I, was able to take a vacation and leave the country for 10 days and know that my business was running well, meeting with my assistants, in the morning each day to check in, and everything went fine.
Everything went fine, and your business has continued to grow. You're doing very well. Yes. All right. So what do you think corporate sort of lessons learned to share with other corporate professionals and executives? Why should they even explore a franchise or franchising as an exit strategy?
I think with corporate executives, or people who've been in the corporate life, you have a lot of the skills to run a business, whether you've been in charge of a line of business or a product. You understand, campaigns and marketing when you run a product, or you're responsible for a line of business or something else, something similar, a service. And so you have a lot of the tools already that you need to be a good business owner, understanding the financials and bottom line and where your money's going. Even if you're not in the financial area of a business, you still, as a homeowner or as a, a person who can budget, you have an idea of where money comes in and comes out. And so I think you have the skills. It's really what I think is the draw, is being able to have something that you own, that is yours, that you can create a legacy for your family or for your community, opportunities for jobs in your community, and changing other people's lives because they're working with you. And giving them opportunities to learn and adding value to your community is really important. And so, yes, you can do that in a big business, but the heart of America has been small businesses for a long, long time.
Yeah.
To the fabric of your community and being able to make an impact. That was really my why, was being able to create something that one would help people who owned properties, have someone manage it professionally and that would take care of it like it was their own, but also to provide, housing and opportunities for people who, don't own a home but are going to rent, but also could potentially own a home. So how we treat people and help them grow in their own personal lives is just as important. And so I see it as a way for me to provide service not only to my owners, but to my residents and even to the vendors that I work with, providing business. And so it, helps my city, my community. And also I think as a woman of color and a veteran and all of those things, it also provides an opportunity for people who look like me, that are younger and who haven't seen someone own a business or have that type of impact, that they can see that it's possible. and provide some motivation.
Well, that's fantastic. And what I'm hearing from that is why executives and professionals should consider franchises. They already have so many of the skills, or all the skills, that they need to be a successful business owner. And one of the things that I've noticed is people from the corporate world, they're used to structure. Well, franchising provides that structure. You know, you're in business for yourself and not by yourself. So and as you mentioned, you alluded to, or not alluded, you made it very clear you had a lot of systems to learn. You did make the transition. So
yeah, I think with corporate people, you've already also built a network. So when it comes down to like if you're starting a business, you already have a strong network from your past career. So I have found that, you know, being able to build on the past, my brand in my corporate life has been an asset. You know, if you've built a career of 20 years somewhere else, don't think of it as you're having to start something new. You are starting a new business, but you are taking with you people who are connected to you and already trust you and will probably work for you or with you because you've worked with them in the past. And so it's not like you're starting over after a career. I think it's also an opportunity, a reason why it's encouraging for a lot of folks, you know, if you're thinking of that jump is, you have the skills, but the things you don't know, the franchise will help you with. And so if you're not an expert in marketing or you don't understand anything about AI or the cloud or even some of your software, they will fill in the gaps for you. And so there's not a feeling you have to be an expert in everything. You can always have that support network with you to fill in the gaps. Yes. Well, so I met you before before I went to that conference. And so I think all the time before, we'd probably been meeting for a few weeks before I went on that conference because we had talked about it before I went. And what I think the reason that I enjoyed working with you is that you prepared me for that conference. So like I probably would not have been, the reason I went to that franchising session was I was like, oh, okay, well, this makes sense. I'm talking to Ann about franchising. Let me go see what they have to say. Like what information are they going to provide? And meeting people maybe who are actually in, I think at that point we hadn't gotten to like talking to people in the franchising. It was just you and I talking through really goals and kind of like a discussion like this. What do you want from your life? What are you, you know, the goals that you and I wrote down, I still have them and helped me when I was part of the franchise is when I started the franchise was we build our why. Like, what is our why? And my why was tied to those goals that you helped me create. And, you know, how did I want to build the future and ensure that the business helped me achieve those goals? Those are also very valid. You helped me face some questions that I had not asked myself, you know, some reflection questions that I probably had just deflected for a long time. Like what was keeping me from starting a business? And, you know, if it's just you asking yourself the question, it's easy to brush that off. And I had for many years, but you kind of holding me accountable and asking those difficult questions kind of made me get to that point of, okay, what is the holdup? You really helped me get out of my own way. And that I probably would just kick the can for a little bit longer and not really held myself to those questions. And I think in the sense of also at that point, again, I was not fully satisfied with the opportunities I was getting and what I was seeing available from corporations and from other other places. And in a way, you opened the door to a whole new opportunity that I hadn't considered and where I felt like I could add value again and make a difference. And I hadn't felt that in a long time. And so it was eye-opening and encouraging as well.
Well, fantastic. Well, I'm glad you got some value out of it for sure. And
yes.
And I appreciate you being here, sharing your story. So what advice do you have for anyone considering becoming a business owner?
The advice I would have would be to keep an open mind. So even if you are thinking you want to transition in some way from your executive career and you're thinking it's going to be to another company or even starting, you know, something similar, I would consider franchising. When I talk to veterans that are transitioning from the military, I tell them you need to consider franchising because it's an accelerating opportunity. So yes, you can. Everyone has the ability to start their own, you know, from scratch on their own. You draw out your business plan, you find the technology, you hire the people, you do the marketing, you do all the work. And I believe that that is the fabric of America. But one of the wonderful things about franchising is that they give you the system and the tools that you need in order to start a business and help guide you, which accelerates your business. So for me, starting a franchise in the middle of my career, I wanted to accelerate my growth so that I could still reach the goals that I would have originally had with like a 20-year, or 30-year, corporate career. I didn't want to kind of start over. I wanted to be able to jump in and really accelerate my growth and take the business as fast as grow the business as fast as I could with the tools. And I think if I had tried doing it myself, it would have taken me a little bit longer to get to that break-even point or the profitability point. They were able to, with my business coaches, set aggressive goals. And not that I would not have been aggressive on my own, but understanding all the parts and pieces that went into that. And again, those expertise and things that I would have had to teach myself or hire someone. I think the franchise ownership gives you the opportunity to really move as fast as you want using the skills, using the tools and resources from the franchise and that peer group. I think that's really the magic of a franchise ownership, is that you aren't doing it alone. Yes, I make all the decisions, and yes, if all the good, bad, and ugly is through me and is in my decision authority, but I still am working and talking to regularly or meeting with the other owners, whether in my city or in my state or in my peer group. We have a call today with the peer group across the country. And so I never feel like I'm by myself trying to figure something out. If I have a question that, or a very odd situation, it's the first time I've ever dealt with this, I have a group of people and different groups of people, whether they've been owners for 20 years or they started at the same time I did, to ask, what worked for you? What vendor do you use to solve for this problem? Or, how did you handle this type of situation? And there hasn't been a time where people didn't respond with answers or advice. And so what I've loved about this community of owners is that we're all working together and sharing best practices. Nobody is keeping, the secret to success to themselves. They really are sharing that and ensuring that we're all successful together. And so I don't feel like I'm alone. And so I that's one of the reasons that I was kind of hesitant about leaving and like starting my own business, because I'm very social and I love what I loved about my corporate life. I had a lot of friends and coworkers and colleagues, and I loved the people aspect of the business. I just thought, well, I'll just be by myself in my office or by myself looking at houses, and it can be kind of lonely in that aspect. But it's not, because I have other owners and I don't feel alone. We talk regularly with my coach or with my peer group, and it's that way of owning something yourself, but not doing it alone.
Well, Alice, you've mentioned a couple of times business coaches and your coach. So I want the audience to understand that your franchise actually assigns a business coach to its franchisees to help you through the process. So
yes, they do. And it's good to point out. So at the beginning, when you sign on the dotted line, there's a coach that takes you through the literal steps of starting a business, incorporating and getting your license and all the things that you need, at least for this business, to get things started, your office, like finding a location. I didn't know how to find a commercial location.
Yeah.
What,
never done it before.
I've never done that before. And so just those kind of steps, having someone to get you on board you from that aspect, and then you transition. So what I've liked about it is that as your business grows, you move to different coaches. So each we're in peer groups based on where we are in our business. Mm-hmm. And so as you move through your growth structure or your growth, you move into different coaching, into a different peer group and a different coach, and they focus on different things. So at the beginning, it's, like I said, getting the business started, and then you move into, how do you answer the phone? How do you have a conversation? And what's your not your sales pitch, but how do you have that conversation and facilitate a conversation about getting someone to trust you with their business, but that is natural too. And so they give you, some structure and again, the systems and the software and the people, and then it moves into, the next phase of, now that you have business, how do you actually do things, and what are your accounting, and how do you run accounting, and how do you run checks? And I've really appreciated that the coaches have offered, when I've had questions, whether in a coaching meeting that we have regularly, or a one-off where something comes up and I really don't know the answer to the question, I've been able to ask it and get advice. And because they're working with other owners, they'll often connect me with other owners that maybe I don't know yet, that had a similar situation, or because they've worked with someone else, they'll provide, hey, here's a best practice that worked, in another state or in your common state. And so it's helpful to have a wealth of knowledge at different points in your growth and focus on different things. Now that you're making money, what do you have to do to, from a tax perspective and from a business structure? So I've appreciated that there are things that I know exist, but it's good to have someone else keeping track and helping me think of those things ahead of time. Paying taxes the first year. I mean, I knew I needed to do it.
Yeah.
Like ensuring that I was putting money aside to pay taxes.
Yeah.
Hopeful to have someone remind me of that.
Yes, absolutely. Alice, thank you for sharing your story going from executive to entrepreneur. What advice do you have to give people when it comes to considering making an exit from the corporate world?
That's a question I get a lot. So I would say for the first thing, consider franchise ownership, because you need to give it a try and really give it a real good try and explore the opportunities that are available to you. And second, I would say working with you would be I don't even second, maybe they're both number one. Working with you, because you'll help figure out what are the opportunities and explore things that you really maybe didn't even know were a franchise or were an opportunity, and then narrow down like what's the right fit. I think you do a good job of understanding each person individually, and then pairing them with the right type of franchising opportunities to help them narrow down the focus and target what is best for them.
Well, Alice, we are out of time. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your executive exit story with our audience. I know they learned a lot. And as you explained, it is a big deal to make a career transition. And I know your insights will help others as they consider a similar move. So thank you for being here, Alice Garcia. And audience, thank you for watching and listening, and come back next week to learn about a potentially lucrative essential service with evergreen demand, similar to property management. You're not going to want to miss it. Make it a priority to be here. See you next Wednesday at 11:30. I'm Anna Wilds, the franchise economist.